The first signs that something unusual was happening appeared so quietly that almost nobody paid attention. It began on a calm evening when most people were busy with their normal lives, eating dinner, scrolling through their phones, watching shows, or talking with family. Far away from all that, inside a quiet monitoring room of an international space-watching center, a single radar operator sat alone. His shift was usually slow, almost boring, but he took his duty seriously. Night, as he sipped cold tea and looked at the steady blinking lights on the large screen, one tiny signal flashed for a moment. It was so brief, he thought he imagined it. The signal returned again, this time stronger, clearer, and moving. He leaned forward, slowly lowering his cup, unsure if he should laugh or worry. Strange signals happened sometimes. They were usually satellites drifting, weather interference, or small space debris passing by. But this one felt different. It carried a strange rhythm, almost like it was trying to hide yet failing at it. He checked the system for errors. None. He restarted the scanner. The signal sharpened. Something was out there. He marked it in the system, expecting it to vanish like a glitch. But instead of disappearing, it grew stronger every minute. The object was moving too fast for any normal satellite or spacecraft. The system began calculating its path, and when the numbers finished crunching, he felt a cold wave roll through his chest. Whatever it was had changed direction, and now it was heading straight toward Earth. He sat in silence for a long moment, trying to think of a reasonable explanation. There had to be one. Maybe a secret launch from some country. Maybe space junk falling inward. Maybe even a miscalculation. Yet the speed was increasing, not decreasing. That alone made no sense. Falling objects slow down when they hit Earth's gravity fields, unless they have some kind of engine pushing them. And this signal wasn't behaving like any falling object he'd ever studied. He reported it to his supervisor, expecting to be told that he was mistaken. Instead, the supervisor frowned, looked over the data, and called the director. The director took one look at the numbers and immediately ordered all stations to double-check their radar readings. Within 10 minutes, calls were being made across the world to confirm what they were seeing. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Everyone was detecting something enormous, something moving with purpose. At first, the top officials didn't want to alarm anyone. They asked teams to keep it confidential until they understood more. It might still be a glitch. It might still disappear. So they waited and observed. But instead of fading, the signal grew larger. It reflected no known signatures. It wasn't shaped like anything humans had launched into space. And it wasn't broadcasting any message. Not a sound, not a beacon, not even static. It had the silent confidence of something that didn't need to announce itself. Back in the control room, the operator watched the object getting closer through the tracking software. There was something strange about its movement. It didn't drift. It didn't wobble. It didn't react to gravitational pulls the way normal objects did. It moved smoothly, straight, steady, almost like someone was steering it with perfect control. He wondered if he should feel excited or terrified. News leaked faster than officials expected. A few astute space enthusiasts noticed unusual activity. In satellite logs, a couple of reporters picked up whispers from technicians. Soon social media filled with small, half-serious rumors. Something big is coming. Maybe it's an asteroid. Maybe it's aliens. Maybe it's just a storm messing with signals. Even though most people brushed it off as a joke, the radar operator knew it was no joke. The object was now visible through multiple systems around the world. Every reading pointed toward the same strange truth. The size of the object was massive, far bigger than any plane, rocket, or space station humans had ever built. Engineers tried comparing the signal to known materials. It didn't match any. Whatever the thing was made of, It absorbed almost all signals except for a faint outline. That meant either extremely advanced technology or something nature had never formed before. While the world slept, teams of experts gathered in quiet rooms to discuss possibilities. Each meeting ended with more questions than answers. No one could identify the speed. No one could explain the structure. And no one could agree on what exactly was coming. Some said it was a false reading created by electrical storms. Others said it might be a giant broken piece of a forgotten spacecraft drifting home. A few suggested it could be a new type of space experiment from a country not willing to admit it. But the scariest possibility, the one nobody wanted to say out loud, was that it wasn't a glitch at all. As hours passed, the object changed speed again. Now it was accelerating. The new numbers were unbelievable. No natural force could do that. Engines had to be pushing it. But what engines could reach such speeds without burning up or exploding? The radar operator watched his screen as the object gained clarity. The shape appeared strange. Not round like a planet, not sleek like a rocket. It had a long, sharp form, almost like a blade cutting through space. The edges were uneven, but controlled, as if built with purpose. The longer he stared, the more it reminded him of a warship, something giant, something meant for travel, endurance, and maybe even conflict. He tried to calm himself. There were many kinds of ships. Just because it looked powerful didn't mean it was dangerous. But the thought wouldn't leave him. Why would a ship so enormous, so fast, so advanced, be approaching Earth without any communication? Scientists attempted sending messages toward the object's simple greetings, radio pings, diplomatic signals. All were met with silence. Not rejection, not noise, just silence, as if the object didn't care to answer. At sunrise, members of international defense councils gathered in private rooms. They studied every image, every number, every possibility. But the biggest shock came when a deep space telescope captured a faint outline of the object. When analysts enhanced the image, they froze. The design looked strangely familiar, not alien, not foreign, not random. It carried the same engineering patterns humans used on their own spacecraft, the same symmetry, the same structural logic. But scaled up to a level that made no sense. It looked human-made, yet far too advanced to be anything humanity could have created secretly. This realization created a storm behind closed doors. If humans didn't build it on Earth, did humans build it somewhere else? Some officials dismissed the idea immediately. Impossible. Humans had never traveled that far into deep space. Humans had never built anything that could survive for decades or centuries in the unknown. Humans didn't have the materials, the propulsion, or the technology. But others, especially those familiar with old classified projects, felt a deep, uncomfortable understanding stirring inside them. They remembered rumors, long-buried programs, experimental missions that never returned, unexplained disappearances hidden behind polite government statements. One of the oldest analysts, who had been silent the entire meeting, finally said in a low voice, "There was a project many years ago, a mission that never came home." The room grew quiet. Nobody wanted to believe it. Nobody wanted to imagine that something built by human hands long ago was now charging toward Earth with unknown intentions. Meanwhile, the radar operator had become consumed with the signal. He barely ate, barely looked away from the screen. Every few minutes, he refreshed the data, hoping it would turn out to be a mistake. But the numbers kept rising. The object was too fast, too precise, too focused. The world outside continued as usual. Children went to school. Markets opened. People argued, laughed, lived their normal lives completely unaware that something massive was slicing through space toward their planet. Only a handful of experts knew the truth, and none of them were confident enough to tell the world. Soon, the object's glow became visible to high-level telescopes. It had reached a point where it could no longer hide behind distance. It was approaching, and it was no longer possible to pretend it wasn't real. The first tiny spark of public fear started when a hobbyist astrophotographer captured an elongated shape near the edge of Earth's sky. He posted it online with the caption, "I don't know what this is, but it's moving fast." Within hours, hundreds of people reposted the photo. Within a day, millions had seen it. Rumors spread like wildfire. Something is coming. Something big. Something not from Earth. The radar operator watched the public panic rise and felt a strange mix of responsibility and helplessness. He knew more than they did, but he wasn't allowed to say anything. His job was to observe and report, and that was all he could do. Late that night, after nearly 20 hours of tracking without rest, he saw the numbers shift again. The object had just changed direction, slightly adjusting its path in a way that no drifting object could. It was a deliberate move. Someone or something was piloting it. He leaned back in his chair, feeling a chill ripple through him. The object was no longer just approaching Earth. It was choosing its path. It was choosing its angle. It was coming. With intention. For the first time in his life, he felt truly small. Not frightened, not panicked, just deeply aware that humanity might soon face something it had never faced before. Something beyond explanation. Something beyond control. As the object closed the distance, his screen displayed new readings. The software tried to estimate what would ha. The news about the mysterious object had spread more than anyone expected. Even though officials tried their best to keep things quiet, small details slipped out. A technician mentioned something to a friend. A scientist told a relative to keep an eye on the sky. A worker in an observatory posted a vague message online. One small whisper after another slowly built into a global conversation. By the time the sun rose the next day, people everywhere were talking about it. No one had the full story, but everyone knew something unusual was approaching Earth. Some people joked about it. Others got nervous. Some ignored it completely, assuming it was another rumor that would fade in a few days. But for the people working behind closed doors, there was no room for guessing or joking. They knew the object was real, and they knew it was getting closer. Inside a large meeting room in an international security building, a group of officials sat around a long table. Screens on the walls showed data, charts, and blurry images of the strange object. None of the images were clear enough to show exactly what it looked like, but they showed enough to confirm the same truth. The object was massive. One official tapped a pen against the table nervously. "If this was a satellite, we would know," he said. "If it was space debris, it wouldn't move like this." "So what is it?" A scientist adjusted his glasses, zooming into one of the images. "It's too early to say exactly. But one thing is sure, it's controlled. The path changes are deliberate." Another official sighed and rubbed his forehead. "So it's a ship?" The scientist hesitated. "It behaves like one." The room fell silent for a moment. Not because they were afraid, but because the idea itself felt impossible. If it was a ship, who built it? And where had it been all these years? The oldest analyst in the room cleared his throat. "There were old missions," he said softly. "Programs that were shut down. Projects that were erased from records. Not everything that was built or tested remained public knowledge." A younger officer looked confused. "Are you saying humans built that thing?" "I'm saying," the older analyst replied, "that something like this was once whispered about. Something large. Something powerful. But it was never confirmed. And it was never found." The younger officer didn't know what to say. The idea that humans might have built something so advanced many years ago sounded unbelievable. It would mean someone had achieved technology far ahead of its time. Technology people today still couldn't explain. Outside the government buildings, the world continued living normally on the surface. But underneath that calm, there was quiet tension growing. People wanted answers. They wanted reassurance. They wanted comfort. But no one in power had any real explanation to give. A news channel ran a small segment about the object, calling it a curious space event. Social media users argued about theories. Some believed it was a harmless rock. Others swore it was a secret experiment. A few treated it like an exciting mystery. Yet all of them felt that something was different this time. The world had seen space events before, but nothing felt as strange or as organized as this. Meanwhile, at observatories around the world, scientists worked without rest. Many had dark circles under their eyes. They drank endless cups of coffee. Some hadn't gone home in days. They were trying to pull as much information as they could from every telescope, every radar system, every scanner. A group of scientists gathered around a large screen showing a clearer image of the object. The shape became more defined as it came closer to Earth. Long, angled, structured, almost like a skyscraper turned on its side, drifting through space with calm confidence. One scientist leaned forward, staring without blinking. "This design," he murmured. "It looks structured. It looks engineered." Another scientist whispered, "Engineered by who?" The first one didn't answer. He didn't know. A third scientist pointed to a section of the image. "Look at these patterns. The panels, the lines. They're arranged like a human ship," the first scientist finished. The group fell quiet. None of them wanted to be the first to officially say it. But the signs were becoming harder to ignore. That afternoon, a video call was arranged between the leaders of several countries. The screen filled with the faces of presidents, generals, directors, and advisors. Each looked serious, slightly worried, and exhausted from lack of sleep. The director of the Space Monitoring Center presented the latest data. "The object will reach the outer part of Earth's orbit in a few days," he explained. "It has not slowed down. It has not responded to any communication attempts." One leader frowned. "Is it dangerous?" "At the moment, we have no reason to assume so," the director replied carefully. "But we also have no signs of peaceful intent." Another leader leaned forward. "Can we stop it?" The director hesitated. "Its size suggests it may not be something we can simply block or move, and we still don't know what powers it." The leaders exchanged uneasy glances. The uncertainty was unsettling. They were used to making decisions based on clear facts, but this situation was filled with unknowns. Back at the Space Center, the radar operator who had first spotted the signal sat quietly at his station, watching the numbers shift. He had been praised for discovering the object early, but he felt no pride. Instead, he felt a heavy weight in his chest. He didn't want to be known for this. He didn't want to be connected to something that might change history. He watched the object's path once again. It was still coming straight toward Earth, smooth, controlled, almost graceful. He wondered who or what was guiding it. If it truly was human-made, then why return now? Why after so many years? And why in such a dramatic way? As the hours passed, the object began to reflect sunlight, making it faintly visible in telescope images. The brightness revealed more detail. Some parts of the surface looked worn, as if the ship had traveled through rough areas of space. There were marks that looked like old scars, nothing dangerous, nothing violent, just signs of long travel. A young scientist pointed at the screen excitedly. "Do you see that? The outer structure, it's layered, not random. It's built with the same kind of paneling humans used in deep space modules decades ago, but thicker, stronger, almost futuristic." Another scientist nodded slowly. which means someone kept improving it. Someone evolved the design far beyond anything we know. The room filled with quiet murmurs. That idea raised even more questions than answers. If humans built it, why? Was it so far ahead technologically? And where had the crew been all this time? A senior scientist stepped back from the screen with a troubled expression. This ship, if it is a ship, didn't just travel. It survived something large. Her voice was soft, almost thoughtful, not fearful. She wasn't imagining a battle or anything dangerous. She was simply acknowledging that space was not empty. Space was filled with storms, debris fields, radiation belts, and natural obstacles that could damage anything unprepared. The officials overseeing the project didn't want to jump to conclusions. They repeated the same caution at every meeting. Do not assume. Do not speculate publicly. We need clear evidence. But privately, behind closed doors, even they couldn't deny what they were seeing. The design was too deliberate, the path too controlled, the shape too structured. It was more than an object. It was something built with intention. 2 days later, the world finally received its clearest view yet. A high-resolution telescope captured a long, crisp outline of the ship. It was still far away, but close enough to reveal that it wasn't round or broken or chaotic. It had clean lines, solid form, and definite architecture. Someone in the control room whispered, "It really looks like a warship." The room didn't react dramatically. They didn't jump or panic. They simply stared quietly, processing the truth. The term warship didn't necessarily mean danger. It simply described the scale, the design, the power behind the structure. Yet everyone knew that such a ship could not exist without a purpose. Outside, people around the world gathered in parks, rooftops, balconies, and open fields, not because they could see the object yet, but because they felt something was happening, something historic, something overwhelming. The sky suddenly mattered more than usual. Families talked about it over dinner. Workers discussed it during breaks. Students whispered about it in classrooms. The world didn't feel threatened, just curious, confused, and strangely united by the mystery. News reporters tried to stay calm while sharing official updates. They used gentle words like unidentified object and unusual event. They avoided terms like ship or craft. They didn't want to scare people. They wanted to keep things steady. But even without traumatic words, people sensed the seriousness. It was there in the tone of the voices. It was there in the faces of scientists during interviews. It was there in the way governments spoke with caution. One evening, a well-known scientist appeared on a major news network. He didn't reveal secret details. He didn't guess. He simply said, "We are observing something remarkable, something beyond our current understanding. But we are working together to learn more." His calm voice soothed many viewers. His steady tone reminded people that the world had faced mysteries before and survived them. But for the officials monitoring the object directly, calm wasn't easy. Every hour brought the ship closer. Every hour revealed new details. Every hour made it more obvious that this wasn't a random event. This was something with intention. The object final. As the strange ship continued its slow approach toward Earth, the atmosphere inside government buildings shifted from confusion to concern. People weren't panicking, but they were beginning to feel something deeper, a quiet pressure, like history was leaning forward, waiting to reveal something important. Inside a secure research facility, a group of intelligence analysts stared at a wall filled with old documents, faded photographs, and dusty files. These weren't regular files. They were from hidden storage, locked away for decades. The only reason they were being opened now was because the mysterious ship seemed human-made. And if humans hadn't built it recently, and maybe, just maybe it, was connected to something from the past. An older analyst unfolded a yellowed paper with careful hands. These were never meant to be seen again. He murmured. Another analyst looked over his shoulder. If the ship is connected to this project, we need to understand what happened. The world deserves answers. The older man nodded. The world deserves the truth, even if the truth is something we once tried to forget. The documents described an old mission from a time when technology was more experimental and risks were taken in silence. The mission had a simple goal on paper: explore deeper than any human had ever gone. But unofficially, the project aimed for something almost unbelievable: testing a propulsion system that could push a ship far beyond known range, into areas no human had ever reached. The mission launched quietly and disappeared just as quietly. No news reported it. No official statements mentioned it. Only a few people knew it ever existed. When communication with the crew was lost, the project was shut down. The files were sealed. Life moved on. But now, as the analysts compared the ship's structure to old sketches from those forgotten documents, the similarities were undeniable. The shapes matched. The design philosophy matched. Even the paneling style matched, just far more advanced. One younger analyst whispered, almost breathless, "If this is the same ship, how did it become so large? How did it become so advanced?" Nobody had answers yet. Meanwhile, in the main control center, scientists continued analyzing new images of the ship. The ship was getting close enough that telescopes could now capture shadows and reflections along its surface. It looked enormous, much bigger than the original size mentioned in the old mission files. One scientist zoomed in on a section of the hull. "These markings, they don't look like damage. They look like changes, repairs, upgrades." Another scientist leaned closer. "Upgrades made by who?" It was the question everyone kept asking, but no one could answer. The most shocking discovery came the next morning, when a high-resolution scan caught something unexpected. A small shape, a tiny movement almost too faint to notice. But it was enough to cause an uproar inside the room. A crew. There was someone aboard. The scientists stared at the screen, struggling to keep emotion steady. It wasn't clear how many were aboard or who they were, but the movement was unmistakable. Someone inside the ship was walking past a window-like opening. A deep silence filled the room. For the first time, the ship was not just an object. It was a vessel carrying living people. A senior scientist pressed a hand against his forehead. If that is truly a human silhouette, then we might be witnessing something extraordinary. Nobody dared to look away from the screen. Later that day, the intelligence team brought their findings to the leaders. They presented the old documents, the mission logs, and the similarities between the lost project and the approaching ship. The room reacted with shock, confusion, and disbelief. One leader shook his head slowly. "We sent people that far into space and forgot about them?" It wasn't about forgetting, one analyst explained carefully. The mission was classified. Only a few individuals even knew the truth. When contact was lost, the project was buried because no one expected them to survive. Another leader whispered, "But they did survive." The analyst nodded. "It appears so." The world outside still had no idea about these discussions. People were still guessing, sharing theories online, making jokes to ease their nerves, and waiting for officials to speak. Some people gathered in open fields, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ship with telescopes. Others stayed indoors, pretending nothing unusual was happening. But inside government rooms, reality was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, a small meeting was held between top-level officials. The atmosphere was serious but calm. They weren't trying to panic anyone. They just wanted truth. The director of the space agency spoke first. We now believe the ship may be connected to an old human mission." A general looked surprised. "You're saying humans built that? That massive thing?" "Yes," the director said, "but we don't know how it became so large. The original ship was much smaller, and we don't know where the crew has been all this time." Another official added, "Time dilation is possible. If they traveled at extreme speeds or near unusual energy fields, time for them might pass slower than for us." The general frowned. "So the crew could still be the same age as when they left?" "It's possible." The thought sent a quiet shiver across the table. The idea that a group of people had left Earth decades ago and might return unchanged felt both incredible and unsettling. Meanwhile, the radar operator, the same one who first spotted the signal, sat at his station again, staring at the screen. He felt connected to the ship in a strange way. Not personally, but emotionally. He had watched it from the moment it was a tiny flicker. He had watched people dismiss it, then worry about it, then dig into its past. Now it was almost close enough to orbit Earth. He wondered what the crew was thinking. Were they looking at Earth right now? Had they missed it? Had they longed for it? Did they even expect to return? He imagined them inside the ship, hearing familiar words for the first time in decades. He imagined their thoughts, their questions, their fear or hope. The idea made him feel small again, but in a human way, not in a frightened way. As the ship got even closer, more details became visible. There were different textures on the surface, as if parts of it had been rebuilt many times. Some sections looked incredibly smooth, almost glowing under sunlight. Others looked older, like original pieces from the forgotten mission. The scientists began noticing something else. Symbols, small shapes etched along the sides. Patterns, lines, maybe even language. It wasn't alien. It looked more like markings used by engineers, notes to guide repairs. But some symbols didn't match human engineering styles. They looked unfamiliar, as if the crew had learned something new out there. A scientist softly said, "They weren't alone." The room grew tense. It didn't mean they faced danger. It simply meant the crew interacted with someone somewhere far beyond Earth. They had learned, adapted, changed. And it showed in the upgrades on the ship. The next day, a clearer glimpse of the interior came through a shadowed window. The shape of a person was more defined this time. It was unmistakably human. The outline of shoulders, arms, a head. The way they moved. The way they paused, as though looking out toward the direction of Earth. The scientists exchanged glances, filled with awe. "They're coming home," someone whispered. But the home they were returning to was not the same one they left. The world had changed: technology, culture, politics, everything. And yet, perhaps the biggest change had happened to them. Not Earth. The intelligence team dug deeper into the old files and found personal profiles of the original crew. Photos of them before the mission. Smiling, excited, hopeful faces. They had no idea their journey would become a mystery lost in time. One analyst stared at an old photograph for a long moment. If even one of them is still alive on that ship, imagine what they've seen. Another replied, imagine what they might know. No one said the darker possibility out loud. Imagine what might have happened to them out there. Not harmful, not violent, just the emotional reality of being alone in deep space for decades. Inside the ship, the crew might have felt joy when Earth finally came into view again, or fear, or relief, or confusion. Maybe all at once. Back on Earth, people continued talking online. Some laughed and said, it's probably nothing. Others said, what if it's something big? A few made stories of their own, imagining who might be inside. Everyone was curious. Everyone felt something: rising excitement, uncertainty, Governments finally decided they needed to prepare a controlled communication attempt. They didn't want to scare the crew or seem aggressive. So they planned a calm, simple message. Unknown. Vessel, this is Earth. If you can hear us, please respond. The message was sent in multiple frequencies, in multiple languages, repeated gently over time. For hours, there was no reply. The ship sailed forward at its calm, steady pace. Officials waited, scientists waited, the world waited. Then, late at night, a faint echo came through, so faint that most systems almost missed it. Not a message, not words, just a small signal, a human touch, a sign that someone out there heard Earth's voice, and they were listening. The moment the message from the human warship spread across the galaxy, nothing felt normal anymore. Even though the message had been calm and almost gentle, every person who heard it felt a strange pressure in their chest, like the air itself had become heavier. It was not because the humans had threatened anything. They never did. It was simply the way the voice sounded, confident, steady, and carrying a weight of experience that no one else could understand. In the observation hall on the neutral station, the council delegates sat in silence. The atmosphere had turned, so still that even the sound of breathing felt loud. People exchanged glances, trying to read each other's reactions, but every face looked the same, uncertain, confused, and unsure of what tomorrow would bring. The human officer who had spoken earlier remained calm. He stood near the wide glass window, looking out at the distant light where the human warship was approaching. He didn't seem tense or fearful. Instead, he looked thoughtful, as if he was listening to something no one else could hear. One delegate finally broke the silence. What does it mean when a ship says it is coming to help us all? Help us with what exactly? No one knew the answer. Another voice spoke, softer. Maybe humans think something is coming. Something we have not detected. That thought made the room even more uneasy. For years, humans had lived far from the galactic center. They did not attend most political meetings. They did not join in interspecies arguments, and they rarely interfered in conflicts. Their quiet behavior had made some species think humans were weak. Others thought they were uninterested. Some even believed humans preferred to remain hidden, because they had nothing impressive to show. Now, everything people used to believe felt wrong. The approaching warship changed the entire galaxy's understanding in a single day. The ship was still hours away from the station, but the delegates already acted like they were preparing for something enormous. Some adjusted their clothing nervously. Others kept checking their devices, reading reports again and again, even though nothing new was coming in. A few tried to talk, but every conversation died after a few sentences. The human officer noticed the tension and finally turned back to the group. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said gently, "but the ship is not coming to harm anyone." One delegate, a tall being with shimmering skin, asked, "If it is peaceful, why does everyone feel so overwhelmed?" The human gave a small smile, tired but kind. Because humans build things for one purpose, to protect. And sometimes protection requires strength. Our ships reflect that. His words calmed some people, but not enough to remove the uneasiness completely. Everyone in the room knew that strength, even when peaceful, could still feel intimidating. Outside the window, a faint glow appeared on the far edge of space. It looked like a star at first, but it grew slowly in size, becoming brighter and more defined. It pulsed softly, releasing smooth waves of light. But the light didn't spread in harsh bursts. Instead, it moved like a calm heartbeat, steady and natural. Delegates stood up from their seats without realizing they had moved. The human officer's gaze softened as he watched the glow expand. "That's the leading signal field," he said quietly. "It keeps nearby systems stable as the ship travels." "Stable?" someone asked. Why would space need stabilizing? Because, the human replied, some areas of space don't behave the way you expect. The ship travels through regions where gravity shifts and where normal engines can't work safely. Our stabilizer field smooths it all out. The explanation was simple, but hearing it made the delegates exchange nervous, amazed looks. No one else had technology that could stabilize space itself. That was something found only in legends or ancient stories, passed between generations. The glow continued to brighten, forming a long stretch of light behind it, almost like a trail marking its path, even though the ship was still too far to see. Its presence was powerful enough to make the room buzz faintly, like a soft vibration running through the floor. One delegate whispered, "The ship itself is creating this effect from this far away?" Another whispered back, "If this is only the outer field, what will the ship look like up close?" The human officer simply watched in silence. Meanwhile, on nearby planets, news had already spread. Families stepped outside their homes and looked at their skies, not because they could see the ship from there, but because they felt something happening. People said the stars seemed brighter. Some said the air felt thicker. Others simply said they felt a strange sense of expectation, like something important was approaching. Traders paused their work. Children stopped playing. Teachers, workers, travelers, everyone, no matter where they lived, felt the shift in the atmosphere. Knock on the station. A gentle chime echoed through the hall, signaling that the ship had crossed into the boundary zone. The delegates straightened in their seats as small holographic screens activated in front of them, displaying data about the ship's approach. The data was overwhelming. Energy levels higher than anything recorded before. A gravitational stability pattern unlike anything seen in council records. Even the radiation signature was incredibly clean, as if the ship filtered its own emissions to avoid disturbing nearby life. Who builds a ship like this? A delegate asked in disbelief. The human officer answered softly, "People who have learned from many mistakes. People who understand that power must be controlled, not shown off." His words carried a weight that made the room grow quiet again. This wasn't the voice of someone defending human pride. It was someone speaking from experience, from history, from lessons learned the hard way. As the ship drew closer, the light outside intensified, but it never became harsh. Instead, it looked almost like dawn rising slowly behind a distant mountain range. The pattern of the glow shifted gently, creating shapes that reminded some delegates of protective wings, while others thought they looked like flowing currents of water. The station sensors showed no threat, no weapons charged, no defensive systems activated. Everything about the ship's approach was peaceful, controlled, and steady. Still, the delegates' hearts beat faster. When the ship finally became visible, the observation hall fell completely silent. Every breath stopped. It was larger than any structure they had ever seen, but the size wasn't what made it astonishing. It was the shape, smooth, flowing, almost organic. The metal surface glowed with soft patterns, like living veins of light moving beneath the hull. There were no sharp angles, no aggressive spikes, no harsh armor plates, nothing that looked dangerous. Instead, the ship looked calm, balanced, and graceful. "It looks alive," someone whispered. "It responds to the crew's thoughts," the human officer replied. Not literally, but almost. In the silence that followed, something surprising happened. The delegates felt their fear fade. The ship, instead of looking like a machine of destruction, felt more like a guardian, strong, yes, but gentle in its presence. It felt as if it had been designed with care, not for dominating others, but for guiding them, shielding them, helping them. The station's lights dimmed slightly as the ship adjusted its position, settling into a stable orbit around the station. The effects were so smooth and controlled and not a single vibration was felt inside the hall. A soft signal tone echoed through the room. A message had arrived. The human officer pressed his device, and a clear, calm voice filled the room. Neutral. Station, this is the vessel approaching with peaceful intent. We are here to assist. We request permission to establish a communication link. The delegates stared at one another in disbelief. The voice did not sound proud or commanding. It sounded warm, steady, and polite. Despite its unimaginable power, the ship asked for permission as if it respected every person on the station, no matter how small or uncertain they felt. A quiet, almost emotional silence settled over the observation hall. For the first time since the announcement of the ship's arrival, the galaxy did not feel afraid. It felt hopeful. And that hope was the beginning of something new. When the human warship finally settled into its calm orbit around the station, the galaxy felt as if it had stepped into a moment it had never experienced before. No one spoke for several seconds. No one even shifted in their seat. The silence wasn't born from fear anymore. It came from awe, deep, quiet awe that made everyone feel incredibly small and incredibly connected at the same time. The human officer standing in the observation hall waited patiently as the delegates slowly gathered their thoughts. He didn't seem surprised by their silence. Anyone who understood the nature of the ship would have expected this reaction. Some things simply left people breathless. After what felt like a full minute, the oldest delegate stood up. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was about to say. If this ship has come to help us, he began gently, then we must first understand what kind of help the humans believe we need. Everyone nodded. The question had been waiting in the air since the first signal was received. Why did a human warship travel across sectors, passing long distances and unpredictable regions of space, just to arrive at a quiet station that had no active conflict? The human officer tapped his device, and a soft projection appeared above it, a simple calm symbol rather than an intimidating display. The voice from the ship returned, speaking clearly. We sensed instability in multiple regions of the galaxy energy, distortions, spatial waves, and unusual changes in gravitational patterns. We are here to stabilize and study these disturbances before they become dangerous. The delegates exchanged looks. That was not what they expected. Not at all. One of them leaned forward. Dangerous how? The voice answered with patience, as if speaking to friends instead of foreign leaders. Your systems may experience unpredictable shifts, navigation errors, communication failures, environmental disruptions. Nothing immediate, but signs show. Rising imbalance. We came because we detected signals that others might overlook. This time, the room filled with soft murmurs. The explanation made sense. Over the past months, several sectors had reported strange glitches, small, barely noticeable issues that people easily blamed on old equipment or natural space weather. But hearing that humans had seen a deeper pattern connecting all these incidents made everyone rethink their assumptions. Another delegate asked, "So the ship is here to fix something? To help stabilize it?" The voice said. "We do not intend to take control of anything. We only wish to prevent a problem from becoming a crisis." The calm honesty in the voice settled over the room like warm light. Nothing about the message felt forceful or demanding. If anything, it felt humble, even though it was coming from one of the most advanced machines the galaxy had ever seen. The human officer looked toward the delegates, reading their expressions carefully. "This is why we sent a signal before arriving. We wanted to make sure there was no misunderstanding." No one argued. No one raised their voice or questioned the ship's intentions. Instead, something new formed: trust. Not blind trust, but the kind that comes from observing someone's actions, tone, and choices with full attention. The delegates agreed to open a direct communication link with the ship. A gentle light spread across the hall as the connection stabilized. The main screen in front of them expanded into a wide, clear view of the ship's outer surface. The glowing patterns on its hull shifted slowly, like waves moving across calm water. A soft hum filled the room, not loud, not unpleasant, simply present. It was the sound of the ship adjusting its systems to match the station's environment, so that communication could be smoothed out. The voice returned. "Thank you for allowing this connection. We are prepared to share what we have discovered." The next hour passed in a way no one expected. Instead of tense questioning or political debates, the meeting felt more like a cooperative workshop. The ship's systems displayed data about the spatial disturbances, gentle fluctuations in gravity, unfamiliar patterns in dark energy, and subtle shifts in stellar movement. None of the information showed anything destructive, but it suggested that something in the galaxy was changing, and humans had noticed it. One delegate finally asked the question everyone was thinking. "How did you detect these changes?" "When we could not," the voice answered honestly, without pride. "Humans explore very far. We travel into regions where sensors behave strangely. Our ships are built to understand not only what is visible, but what is unusual. We've learned long ago that information is important, even when it seems small." The delegates nodded slowly. It made sense. Humans were known for wandering into places others avoided: dust clouds, unstable nebulae, strange empty zones. Some species even joked that humans didn't fear the unknown. They simply walked into it with curiosity instead of caution. After the data presentation, the room relaxed. People began speaking more freely, their voices less tense. Some asked if the ship needed assistance. Others asked if there was any danger to their own planets. A few even asked questions about the ship's design, not technical details, just general curiosity about how something so large could move with such smooth grace. A human officer answered what he could, smiling softly at their fascination. "It is not only a warship," he explained. "It is a guardian vessel. It protects, but it also listens, studies, and adapts. It carries a large crew who have trained for many years. Their role is not to threaten anyone, but to support wherever they are needed." Hearing this eased the last bits of fear that had lingered in the room. The ship wasn't here to display strength. It wasn't here to intimidate. It wasn't here to demand influence. It was here because humans believed something was happening, and they didn't want anyone to face it alone. Eventually, the delegates decided to send messages to their homeworlds, explaining the situation carefully so that no panic would spread. Every message was simple and calm. Humans have arrived to help stabilize new spatial disturbances. There is no threat. Across the galaxy, people listened. And surprisingly, they believed it. Families hearing the news felt relief instead of fear. Traders on distant routes paused only briefly before continuing their journeys. Teachers explained the situation to students with gentle words. Nobody panicked. Nobody sent out defense fleets. Nobody looked at the human warship with suspicion anymore. Instead, people looked at it like a distant protector, quiet, steady, and reassuring. Back on the station, the human officer arranged for a few delegates to speak directly with members of the ship's crew. Faces appeared on the screen, calm, focused individuals with warm expressions and steady eyes. They greeted the delegates respectfully, speaking plainly about their observations and their goals. One of the delegates said softly, "Your ship looks powerful, but your crew speaks with so much peace. It is surprising." A member of the crew replied with a gentle smile, "Strength is most meaningful when it is used to protect, not to frighten." Those words settled deep into the hearts of everyone listening. By the end of the meeting, the atmosphere in the hall had completely changed. The cold tension from the morning was gone. In its place was something warm and uplifting hope, mixed with reassurance. Even after the connection ended, delegates remained in the hall, talking together in small groups. For the first time in a long while, different species were sharing ideas without hidden agendas or competitive tones. They spoke about cooperation, about learning from humans, about preparing together for any future challenges. It felt like the beginning of a new chapter. The human officer stood quietly by the window, watching the ship. The glowing patterns on its hull shifted softly, almost like a heartbeat. It didn't feel like a machine anymore. It felt like a guardian quietly watching over them. A young delegate approached him and spoke shyly. "Do you think we will be safe now?" The officer took a moment before answering, choosing his words with care. "Yes," he said softly. "Not because the ship is here, but because we understand each other better now. When people trust one another, danger becomes much smaller." The delegate seemed relieved and walked away with a gentle smile. As the day ended, the station lights dimmed into a calm evening glow. Through the wide window, the human warship continued to shine quietly in the darkness. Steady, peaceful, and incredibly beautiful. Had arrived with a reputation that frightened the galaxy, but it stayed long enough to change that fear into trust. And in doing so, it didn't just stabilize space. It stabilized something even more important: the bond between humans and the rest of the galaxy. The story of a feared warship approaching had transformed into something unexpected. A story of unity, a story of cooperation, a story of guardianship. The galaxy would never forget this day. And for the first time in a long time, everyone slept peacefully under the same stars.